Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is Friday at about 10 o'clock. Hope everyone's doing good, and hopefully the weather isn't so bad. It's supposed to be pretty crappy tomorrow and pretty stormy. It might taper off in a day, but tomorrow night, Saturday, Quantum, my band Quantum, has a gig at Hey Sailor, which is, I think, the premier venue here in Maine and definitely in Mid Coast Maine. I think it's easily the best venue, hands down. It's a real space. It's a real space to go and see live music. I've been there a lot to see music. I've seen some really great music, really great bands. And the thing that's so awesome about Hey Sailor is that they have such a wide variety of things. Like they're doing everything from folk to rock to metal to jazz, electronic music. I mean, it's wild. I've never come across especially a local venue that is willing to go that extra mile and take a chance. Risking to a degree losing their shirt and you know by trying to support local music because there's so much great local music here just in our area alone, and there's so many great artists doing original material. So it's pretty miraculous. It's pretty awesome, and it feels like a real venue. It feels like I know for me, I've been fortunate to play there a few times, and I have some gigs coming up, and we're playing there tomorrow with Quantum at 7 o'clock. So it's a dance party event. So come on out. Hopefully the weather's not too awful, and that won't deter people. But the from a fan of music from that perspective for myself, and I like I said I've gone there quite a few times to just see music. I When I first heard about the place, I was trying to get up there and things weren't working out, and I just didn't make it out. But I finally did, and then I was really blown away by the whole kind of presentation of the whole space. And I know, like, as a fan of just going to see live music, which is like, my pretty much my favorite thing to do. I feel like when I go there, like I'm going to a concert. I feel like I'm going to an event, and I'm gonna have an experience. Different kind of thing than There's a lot of local venues. There's a lot of little bars and restaurants that do have music, all the time, which is great, and that do support the scene. But a lot of the times when you go to these spaces, it's like more background. You don't feel like you're going. You're excited. I'm excited to see music at a lot of these spaces, but it doesn't feel like I'm going to an event. It doesn't feel um like I'm going to a concert, to a degree. And it's not like a featured thing. It's not the main attraction. It's like music is always kind of like secondary. It's but this place feels like when you go there, you're going there for the music, and you feel like you're getting a concert experience, and that's the thing that I love. Even whether it's like I prefer bigger. I should say I prefer smaller shows as opposed to big shows, but this feels like a nice intimate show, even though it is a fairly big space. So come on by. It starts around 7, so it should be a fun time. Hopefully the weather holds up, and it's not totally a messy day. And so today's show is on a movie that I recently saw. I just saw it actually on Christmas, and it's a movie that I don't own. And again, I've said I have tons of movies that I'm always watching, and at times I get sidetracked or kind of inundated with the amount of movies that I want to watch, and then movies that I want to talk about. And I try to always keep things somewhat contemporary, where I'll talk about new movies. I try to always stay with my finger on the pulse as far as new films that are coming out. Like for instance, I was not aware of a few films that are scheduled to come out this year by a few directors that I actually really love, like Alex Garland, for instance, who directed Ex Machina and Annihilation and Men. Just one of my favorite directors. And I was unaware that he has a brand new movie coming out. So I was checking out some information yesterday about some new releases. And I'm pretty excited about some new films that are coming out this year. So yeah, but I try to stay. Most of the movies, probably about 85% of the movies that I cover on this channel are mostly older films. But again, I try to mix things up. The main focus is always horror and genre, the horror genre and science fiction genre and the exploitation. But I love all kinds of movies. I love all styles, and I try to bring in new movies, especially when I go to the theater. Which it's been a while. The last movie I saw, and it's been about a month, was Godzilla minus one, and that was the best movie I saw this year by far in the theater. And so in that light, I really try to stay in tune with what's coming out and new things. But this movie that I'm going to be talking about today, I saw it. I don't own it, and I rented it at Opera House Video. We watched it over at my family's house on Christmas, and I had heard a lot of things about this movie, and that it was very, very good and very brutal and entertaining, and I really liked it. I thought it was an awesome movie, but it kind of got lost in the shuffle as far as things for Film Fanatic. I was going to do a show on it, and I got sidetracked, and I kind of forgot about it for a couple of weeks, and then I just came to the realization a couple of days ago that I have not talked about this movie. So that's what today's show is going to be about. And this movie is called Sisu, and it came out in 2022, so last year. It's a Finnish action movie. It was directed by a director from Finland, Jalmari Hallander, and it's technically a foreign film. But this movie kicked so much ass. It stars Jorma Tomalia, Mimosa Wulamama, Askil Henny, Amdi Tamalia, and Jack Doolan. Sorry for these really bad pronunciations of these Finnish names. But this movie was super awesome. One of the reasons I was reminded of this movie Sisu that I did not review, and it's a new movie. It just came out. I mean, technically, it's from last year, but it had just come out on DVD in like right around Christmas time. And I had heard about this movie from a few different YouTube guys that I watch. And recently, on one of the pages that I post movies to and reviews to, it's the page itself it's a Facebook page, and it's basically a page where people just talk about all the old school grindhouse movies, all the old exploitation movies. And it's really cool. I post a lot of things on there, and then I also hear about a lot of movies. I've had some pretty cool like interactions with people on the page, and it's very, very cool. So one of the things that came up on one of the discussions on that page was people were saying, one guy had posed this question, this big general question. He's like, so can you name any new movies in 2022 that are like new kind of exploitation movies, or new movies that you would consider to be grindhouse movies? And a bunch of people, commented and had some interesting things to say. And the general consensus was that, and the thing that I had said, but it seemed the overview from most of the people that were talking or leaving comments on this question in this thread was, and I feel it too, was that the cinema, or the actual genre of like the grindhouse, the exploitation world as a whole, is dead, and it's been dead unfortunately for a very, very long time. It's apex, or its highest time were the decades of the 70s and 80s. That's where it really hit a certain stride. There were literally thousands, maybe more, of movies coming out of Europe and also America. It was a glorious time. And, of course, the drive in movie theaters, like the way they were dominant and they were everywhere, that does not exist. There are theaters that are, or I should say, there's been kind of an odd but very cool rekindling of that. There are drive-in movie theaters that do exist here. There's one in, I think, in Augusta, which is like an hour away from here. But the culture of exploitation really thrived. Movies were shown in rotation. You pay one ticket, and you know, you'd see 2 or 3 movies back to back. And of course, the legendary 42nd Street in New York City. And there were tons of, these old theaters all around the country that, that's what they did. That's what they showed. They showed all of these great, you know, trashy movies. But, it's kind of like, I feel there's so many, for me, there's so many analogies with, and so many parallels and things in common with like the punk rock scene, in the 80s, late 70s, 80s. And it came fast and furious. It was a total like do it yourself kind of environment. Lots of passion, lots of fire. And it was just a happening thing, but it created something out of what was an alternative to like the socially acceptable thing or the social norm at that time. And it was a reflection, and also holding a mirror to society, but and then also giving a middle finger to the man. But it just burned really bright until it burnt itself out. And I feel like that's what exploitation is to me. Um, and it was, it's my favorite. It's there. There's been so many great periods in film history, so many great decades, and in the bigger picture of things in film. And always there's always different trends, and there's always different influences that where styles cross pollinate. But my easily for me, that world of the exploitation film was my favorite decade. But I had said basically in my response that it's dead. It doesn't exist anymore. But I did say there are films. There's been actually a ton of films that have come out in very recent time that have very much a big influence from that style. The real low budget nature, the real kind of sleazy, the gory aspect, the atmosphere that is that's been taken from a lot of those classic movies from those decades. And I said, well, as a whole, the genre of horror exploitation or grindhouse cinema is dead. I would say it's pretty safe to say it doesn't exist anymore. Um, but there are tons of movies that do come out that do have influences from those films. I think movies like Mandy, for instance, with Nicolas Cage, which for me is my favorite Nicolas Cage movie of all time. That movie was very, very much influenced by like early 80s, late 70s kind of horror exploitation B movies that were coming out. But done in a very presented in a very different way, but an amazing movie, I think. But that movie had a real tremendous influence. I mean, Quentin Tarantino's movies always have some facet of his influence of exploitation in a lot of his movies. Everything from Pulp Fiction to Jackie Brown to to what have you. So there's always that, and he's always kind of referencing those movies. And there's a movie that came out which is a super low budget, which I almost could say is the exception to the rule. A movie that came out that's called Murder Party, a very very low budget movie but very much in the vein of the classic kind of exploitation model. Really awesome movie. And that came out in the late 90s. Or so, I mean, obviously, by today's standards, that's very old. But it's kind of like a modern day, at least at the time that it came out, a very modern day, exploitation kind of vibe. And and I think this movie here, Sisu, is uh, very much very influenced by the classic action exploitation films that were coming out in the 70s. There's a Jess Franco movie that I have called The Angel of Death, and which is such a great, fantastic movie, pure like action exploitation. Really cheesy, but over the top and just amazing. And Sisu really has those elements. It really does. It's got the violence in this movie is so over the top. It's real gritty. It's got a lot of humor to it, and it doesn't take. What I love about it is that it doesn't take itself so seriously. I think, and again, going back to the whole grindhouse exploitation world, that's actually one of the ingredients of why I love, or one of the factors as to why I think I love those movies and that style so much, and why it's my favorite, is that you obviously have movies that dive into you know kind of the occult element, or movies that are full on action movies, and then you have, of course, the giallo, kind of the murder mystery films, where they dive deep into atmosphere and violence and psychosexuality. But there's also, and then you have other amazing directors like Herschel Gordon Lewis. But I always feel that there's, and again, you have different strands where there are certain films that are very, very serious, and they are dark and they are intense. But there's a lot of, most of the films have a tongue in cheek aspect to them where you could tell the filmmakers, the people involved in the film, are having a blast making these movies, and they have no money to make, to really make a movie compared to any other standard of, like, say, bigger Hollywood movies. But at the same time, they are taking what they're doing and what they're crafting very seriously. And it's also, kind of punk rock. It's kind of like holding, it's like giving the man the middle finger too. So it's a combination of all those things. But that's one of the things I love about exploitation movies, is that you can tell the filmmakers and the actors and the people involved with those movies, don't get so pretentious around their craft necessarily, and it's not so serious, and it's not so, it never gets to a point of where you feel the filmmaker is like, his head is up his ass so far because he is, he feels so important. There's always a sense of goofiness or silliness, and not taking yourself seriously, especially in the grindhouse exploitation world. And that's always been a characteristic that I've always loved, because I've always feel like, even in a personal level, you got to take certain things obviously very, very serious, and certain things that you're really, really passionate about, or that you really, maybe your opinions are so strong in some regards, where you like kind of draw a line in the sand, and you're like, well, this is what I believe in, and if you don't agree with me, that's fine, but I'm not gonna compromise. But I think there's a balance. I think you need to also look at it from a very light, whimsical way too. You have to, like, not take yourself so seriously, and at the end of the day, it's not all that important, and it doesn't really matter. And you know, if you're an artist, don't necessarily think you're going to be out there to change the world or change people's views. You're just going to do what you're going to do because you're having fun and you're passionate about what you do, and that's it. But you can still be very serious about certain aspects. And Sisu has such a great sense of humor around itself. It's such a great action movie. The cast is just awesome, and it's super gory. I was really surprised at how gory this film is. And the premise is about this soldier who comes across. It takes place. It's a period piece, which is awesome, and it takes place in World War II. It's a soldier behind like enemy lines who discovers all of this gold, and he decides to try to take this gold and with the and take it through his back to his home, but he knows that he has to encounter. He's going to encounter the Nazi regime, and they're going to do everything that they can to kill him and take his gold. And so the storyline is very very straightforward and very you know simple, but it totally works and it's super fun. And Sisu also has this kind of mythological status. Like he's, a lot of people talk about him as being this, more than a man, almost immortal, and that he can't die. And so it plays into his mythology, and word travels around that this man is not really a man. He's actually kind of this, to a degree, like this killing machine, or like he's immortal. So it has a little bit of this like mystical thing to it, and but it's so entertaining, super fun, great music, beautifully shot, and it is a very low budget movie. But again, I feel like this movie really, really has a big influence from all those classic exploitation movies from the 70s and 80s, particularly in like from the action genre. But I really love this movie. I definitely think it is something I should get on Blu-ray. It's super entertaining. Um, Jorma Tomilia, the lead, is just he's just so badass in this. He just you got heads being blown up, body parts being chopped up, and it's super gory, but it's so entertaining. It's super campy. You could tell that the filmmakers were having fun when they made this movie, and that it's not taken so seriously. But at the same time, it's a very well done movie. But I think it's got a low budget quality to it. It's really gritty. It's really funny. It's super campy. It's kind of goofy, and it's totally entertaining. And I feel like this movie has, even I wouldn't consider it an exploitation grindhouse movie. It is very, very much influenced by that style or styles. More so than any movies that I can think of in recent time that I've seen, as far as newer movies. But it's a tremendous movie. It's super entertaining. I would love. I've only seen this movie on DVD once. Um, but I think it would be absolutely worth the investment on buying this on Blu-ray at some point, because it's an awesome movie. So definitely check it out. I had heard from a few people before I saw this movie that this movie was very good, and it was kind of hyped as being this really kind of underground film that only a few people had seen, and it's actually really cool, and the whole thing. So it was kind of hyped when I first before I saw it, but I think it was totally appropriate and on par, and they were all right, and all of the hype is correct. And I feel like this movie should be more popular than it is. I don't really hear about this movie ever being talked about. It's not to go off on a tangent, but I think the Golden Globes was just recent, and the movie that won every award was Oppenheimer, the new Christopher Nolan movie. I did see that in the theater, and it really is a pretty fantastic movie. Really, really awesome. Killers of the Flower Moon was another movie I saw in the theater, and another just incredible movie. The thing that I was, and again, these are award ceremonies, and a lot of them are just bullshit. But I was really disappointed that Godzilla Minus One was not nominated for. It got nominated for some kind of an effects award, or category, And I'm just like, oh God, you know. The other thing is when I think of Godzilla minus one is it was a very emotional movie, and but super fun and super entertaining on so many levels. And it was fun, it was entertaining, it was a spectacle, and it was very satisfying. And again, Sisu is one of those movies, it's a spectacle, it's super satisfying, and it's fun. You know, I think when you go to a movie or you have that experience, it should be fun. It should be fun. Even if it's a very dark or serious film, it should still have an entertainment value to it. And my only criticism, although it's not really a negative, but like when I think of a movie, and again, so different in compare, you can't really compare them, but then you can. When I think of movies like Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer, and also what I'm talking about today, Sisu, or Godzilla minus one, movies that were completely ignored, completely, which I think are just awesome movies. You know, Oppenheimer was really great. I really love Christopher Nolan. Um, but Oppenheimer is a movie that I feel, again, it's super interesting, very, very well done. But at the same time, I think it's like wicked dry, wicked dry. It's kind of like, I kind of think of it as like, say you're in college, or you're in, or maybe it's after college, and you take an interest, to say, where you want to read some of the classics, or you want to read a book about um, the art history or science history, or some kind of historical thing, and you discover a few different authors that specialize in those particular genres, and you read a couple of their books, and you maybe the first two that you read are very good, very interesting, but they are super dry. They're very academic and kind of hard to get through. But then you discover a later book by that same writer where they'll be talking or going through the same subject matter, but it has this entertainment value. It is it's easier to digest. It just has a little bit more of an entertainment value. It's not dry. It's not one of those things of where you have to drink a big glass of water to get through it. And I feel like when I think of a movie like Oppenheimer and Godzilla minus one or Sisu, again, for two different complete worlds, but I feel like at the end of the day, those movies, Sisu and especially Godzilla minus one, are just more entertaining. Like those are movies that I want to see, where it's just really entertaining, and it's an adventure, and it just has that escapist quality where I feel like Oppenheimer, as great as of a movie as it is, and I really do believe it should, I'm glad it won a lot of awards, and I'm glad it made a lot of money. But I don't know, I can't help but say or think that it's wicked dry, and that's my only criticism. And I think with Sisu, again, completely different world, but it has that entertainment aspect to it. It's not dry. It's still entertaining. Um, so anyway, that's just my opinion. But definitely go see this movie if you get a chance, or rent it or whatever. It's not in the theaters, but really awesome. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.